Welcome to the Motive for Life radio show. This is Robert Christensen. Thank you for joining me. We're going to go back to a little bit over a year ago, mid-COVID, when Devon and I did a podcast on how to reset your day. It turned out to be our most popular podcast of the year, and I wanted to go back and share it with you again because it was so important to maintaining our sanity during COVID, but also just so that you can reset your day at any time that you like. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for listening to the Motive for Life podcast. Bye-bye. Welcome to the Motive for Life podcast. This is Robert Christensen.
And this is Devon Waite.
Thank you for joining us today. And as usual, our whole goal on the Motive for Life podcast, Devon and I are focused on elevating self-worth so that you can attain the things you want out of life by being willing to, that doesn't make any sense at all.
If you just become willing.
If you just become willing, you too can be great. Right. All right, let's do that again. Here we go. Welcome to the Motive for Life podcast. This is Robert Christensen.
And this is Devon Waite.
Hey, Devon, how are you doing?
I'm doing great this morning. How are you?
I'm fantastic. So before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that we are here to elevate self-worth. And what does that really mean? It means that you have to change how you think about the things you want, and that you elevate your own worthiness, meaning that you eliminate the language and the emotions that holding you back. And most people don't relate that to their own barriers. And Devon, I know that you're constantly going through elevation of self-worth these days. And boy, you couldn't be more perfect for you.
I always like to say it's that conveyor belt with the apples going by. And when you talk about changing your thinking, I like my apples red. And when a green one comes through, I just have to flick it off the conveyor belt to keep elevating that self-worth.
I know. I had a bit of a upper limit problem myself these last couple of days. And from time to time, this old language just seeps into my consciousness. And I think it's just a general human condition sometimes, Devon.
I think it is. Yeah. And we have to remember that it can't beat ourselves up over what thoughts run through our head. However, it's what we do with those thoughts. But, I just made a big drive back to be with my family this weekend because I was looking at staying away from them, and it just didn't feel right, and so that I'm glad I listened, and actually listened to some of the men who support me as well too, and made that decision. So yeah, it's good to listen to the men around you or women around you that support you as well too.
Totally agree. Yeah, with that, before we dive into our topic of how to reset your day, which is always at the top of mind for me, I want to welcome a couple of groups of listeners from around the world that I thought was interesting. First off, we get stats for this podcast, and the stats tell us who the listeners are, meaning from a demographics point of view, and more importantly, how many downloads and stuff like that they do. But the country of India is our second highest listening population.
Wow.
I want to say fantastic. There seems to be a desire for the folks in India and the surrounding areas to listen to the content that we're putting out. I want to thank you for joining us. And if there's anything that we can talk about that you're interested in hearing about, email us at info@motiveforlife.com, and we'll be able to address that. Because culturally, I know I work with a lot of folks who have immigrated from India to the United States, and I just love the culture. I love the food. I love a lot about it. And I think there's a reciprocation as well. They want to know more about the culture here in the United States and some of the things that we have that are positive, but we also got our challenges here too, right? Every place has got their own challenges.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, you bring yourself where you go, so I want to say wherever you go, there you are, right?
That's right. Yeah. And I'd like to equally extend a welcome. I just think it's fantastic that have international listeners, and, open arms. We love that you're here, and please, yes, reach out if there's anything you need from us.
And then the second community is in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iran, There's a number of smaller countries in the surrounding areas that are pulling down the podcast. I welcome you. We very much would like to hear from you as well. If there's anything that we can talk about, we are open and willing to hear about people's past journey for their own self-realization, specifically around elevating worthiness in various cultures around the world. We think this is a universal topic. And Devon, to me, this topic cuts across all bounds.
It does. Yeah, culturally, physically, everything.
Yeah, so
It's an issue
everything.
across the board. Yeah.
It is. So let's get into it. So today's podcast is all about how to reset your day. And I remember just a couple of days ago, I think what it was is I was having a little bit of a squirrely problem. I got caught up into things not going my way. And I caught one of those green apples going down the conveyor belt. Okay. And I said to myself, this would be a great topic for a podcast because what can I do to change my thinking? And
Yeah.
Devon, I don't know what you do, but I very much would like to hear, some of the things that you get yourself caught up into. And then do you get a chance to reset? I mean, do you think about that?
Yeah, I do. I do, but it depends on where I'm at in my head. Sometimes I like to beat myself up with that virtual bat and just stay in that funk, unfortunately. But
Mm,
what's great is when you it's almost like practice, so that that muscle to get yourself out of the funk, if you will. And if you can do something to do that and get out quicker and say I'm worthy of getting out of this funk, because I not only will have a bad day, like you said, because things aren't going my way, but I'll take that a step further and beat myself up over it, or have those, a couple green apples go by of, oh gosh, I should have done this, and if I would only done it this way, and all that. So there's a couple of things, and I will say that they all have to do with really some physical activity, sometimes just resting and meditating. But there's a number of ways to do it. And I just remember you started jumping into the ocean recently, didn't you?
I did. And I called that a reset Wednesday.
Oh, I love that.
So a buddy of mine calls me up and he says, "Hey, Robert, you ready for a reset?" And we've been exchanging. He's a fellow self transcendent or self transformation traveler with me, and he and I swap stuff back and forth about what's he doing now for the evolution of his soul, what is he doing to evolve his consciousness and getting closer to source. And I'm right there with him, and we send things back and forth. And he says, "Robert, let's do a reset Wednesday." And I go, "Well, what's that?" He says, "Well, me and a bunch of other guys, we've been alternating going down to the ocean and go for a swim in the water." And I have to say, I've done it twice now, and it has been just a complete reset. I mean, my whole thinking and my body and my I just want to say my nature just 180'd or I don't know what the right word is here, Devin. It kind of narrowed and cleared me.
Hmm. Well, I've been an avid proponent of jumping in the water. If I'm near a pool or the ocean, I'll feel like I miss out on something if I don't get in,
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, opposite of a pool, the ocean, there's just such a power there, and every time you do that and you get out, it's like it's hard to put into words what happens, but it's almost like you just get washed with nature, if you will,
Right.
because the ocean is just so powerful, the way that it moves, and you know. So I really love that you're doing that.
Well, let's go back to our last podcast when you were saying, "Hey, those vistas give you that sense of gratitude, where that you have the horizon is infinite."
Yes,
When you're at the ocean, it's an infinite horizon. It
that's right.
really is, and you're jumping into the horizon.
There's also for me a little fear of what's in there.
Oh,
It's exciting, you know?
I got to tell you, man, thanks for reminding me of that. And I'll carry that next time I go into the ocean. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Well,
But
and it's a metaphor for
it
pushing
is.
past the fear, but you'd miss out on jumping in the ocean if you're too scared to go in every time. However, it invokes a little anxiety in me, and I think that's it kind of primes the reset, if you will.
It does. I took my daughter to the ocean, gosh, 11 years ago, and she got rolled by a wave. And, it scared the hell out of her. It wasn't a big wave, but it was big to her.
Hmm.
Right. And I have to say, she has not been in the ocean since, but but she's a swimmer. This is the irony. She's a long distance athlete swimmer. She was a water polo coach. She's a water polo goalie. She swims every single day, 2 miles or a mile and a half, 2 miles. She swims it every day. And so she loves the water. She is totally a fish, but she's working towards breaking through that fear of getting into the ocean. Anyway, I think that you're absolutely right. So the ocean causes me to click on past that. The other aspect of this reset, though, I think, Devin, is intentional.
Hmm.
Right? I am going there with the intention of resetting.
You have some meaning when you do it, so that when you do it, you're breaking down whatever barrier that was because you set the intention to it.
Correct, correct. And I want to go back to a comment you said about 5 minutes ago, and that was I give myself the worthiness. I elevate my worthiness to recognize my day is heading in a certain way. And I am raising my self worth to reset it and that I'm deserving of a reset.
That's right. It's like you're kind of clearing yourself out, if you will, getting that whatever that is, negative energy. It's just when you set that intention, you prime yourself to release that negative energy even more.
Totally agree. There are a number of ways that you can elevate your self worth through these actions. Some may not appear to be um, avenues to elevated self worth, but through trial and practice with a whole bunch of people that we work with, we found that there have been a few ways that we find that are really kind of physical, like you said, to reset your day. And one of them I found through a practice uh, with a class I did. Before the class, it was a 7-day class and it was 2 hours per day. There was two or three things that the teacher wanted you to do prior to showing up to the class. And the first one was take a cold or tepid shower before you sit down to the class. And it changes your state physically and mentally. Your body shifts into a much more alert state and you reset your thinking. And when I did that going into the course, I just felt completely different and a significantly more receptive for what was coming my way. And I know that you practice some cold showers as well in your life, and but as a reset process, that's really interesting.
It is, yeah. It's activating. For some reason, like you said, I think it shifts it makes you more attentive when you do it. And I gotta say, just something about cold water, and I think of kind of that Viking spirit, if you will, and
Yes,
just embracing the cold. And
yeah,
there's something spiritual to it, you know.
there really is. There's a there's a natural fight desire inside me to push through difficult situations. And if I activate it, my confidence goes up, my motivation goes up in that challenge. So our friend Josh, right, who does the natal chart readings, he
Yes,
he talks about the North Node, that traveling to that, and he says it's all about the push. It's all about the difficulty of it and the satisfaction you get as you work through it.
right.
And I love how he says that. He goes, "You could sit by the fire with your robe on and eat ice cream, and that feels good for the moment. However, it doesn't do you anything, doesn't help you."
Yeah, there's no sense of fulfillment or feeling whole, by completing that. Maybe
Correct.
full and a little guilty.
Yeah. Well, see, when he told me that, because he knows me quite well, sitting by the fire with a robe and a bowl of ice cream is like nirvana to me, right? That's
Yeah, right. Maybe
it's
every now and then, right? Little
yeah.
guilty treat every
Oh,
now and then.
oh my god, you serious? To me? That's
You can't go there,
oh,
huh?
no, I could. I mean, no, I'm all day there. That's the problem, right? It literally will activate my sugar addiction, and I'll be sitting next to the fire and the bowl of ice cream, and next thing you know, a half gallon of Ben and Jerry's is gone.
Isn't that
It-
crazy?
oh my
Yeah.
gosh! Well, you're that way with Skittles, man.
Oh, I tell you, and it lasts for days. Once
Oh, I
that's
know, man.
activated, it's not like for the next couple hours thing. I always like the analogy of eating a donut in the morning. I learned to stop doing that, and I, you know, changed the way I eat over the years. But for the longest time, I did that, and then I just started to realize how unhealthy my choices were throughout the day because I activated that sugar addiction.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
There is so we're talking about swimming, doing a cold shower. What are some of the other things that you, Devin, you travel tend to go a lot in your own space every day. You move from place to place, people to people. What do you do?
Yeah. So, practice some breathing exercises, and along with that, meditation. And I'll say, there's a number of ways for me, also to not only activate, the spirit and energy, but using some other techniques like I like to light a candle, and with that, what I'll also do sometimes is burn a little sage because I just love the smell of it, and or some there's a couple of different things that you can do, and when I do that and I focus on my breathing, I'm activating my sense of smell and all that. So that's a way that I can reset my day too. I do it in the morning. I have my regular meditation routine, but I'm telling you, if I've had a really really rough day, I will intentionally do some of that stuff in the evening, and especially when I'm alone, because it's kind of weird when you're around family and friends to pull off and do that. Easy for me in the morning because everybody's sleeping, but
Yeah.
yeah, so really focusing on the breathing and setting the environment to reset helps.
I'm with you right there, specifically on the sage. So we live in Southern California, so California white sage is it's like a weed out here, it grows
Yeah,
everywhere.
it does.
So I go to a place behind Laguna Beach. There's a bunch of hills and a park back there, and it's everywhere. And there's a number of other places up in the hills in the Santiago Hills, just outside of where you are,
Yeah,
actually. There's a bunch of white sage that grows all over the place. So I go pick big bundles of it and I wrap my own bundles and I let it dry. And so I got my little area outside where I burn sage, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a week. But just like you, just to get the scent, it resets me, it centers me, and it's a very nice practice. And I know that practice of burning a sacred herb or a plant is ubiquitous in
yeah,
all cultures, right?
that's right. Yeah, Palo Santo
Yep.
is the other that would just
Tobacco.
changing the smells. Yeah, yeah, and those herbs they can have very intense meaning, and so it feels powerful, to
Hmm.
do that as well too. So for me, I guess it's that intention. I'm intentionally burning this for a reason. I'm intentionally slowing my breathing down and really focusing on some breath works,
Hmm.
and hence I'm meditating because I'm really trying to clear out my thoughts for the time being, and it's a great way to reset, especially if you're alone and away from people.
One of the breathing exercises we talked about, I don't know, a while ago was the 4, 5, 6 breathing exercise. If somebody, I get calls about from fellow travelers who are in anxiety, they're hyper, they're in a lot of fear. And one of the fundamental ways to reset your day is to tell your nervous system, stop trying to fight. There's that fight or flight instinct inside you, and we're trying to back away from that. And by doing that, you can do a breathing exercise, which is called 4, 5, 6. And the 4, 5, 6 is you inhale for 4 counts. So you breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4. You hold it for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you exhale for the count of 6. And as long as the inhale is shorter than the exhale, or I should say the other way around, the exhale is longer than the inhale, you are signaling to your nervous system to relax.
Hmm.
Okay. What people don't realize is that when you're tense, your breath gets shortened, you're moving in and out, you constantly are depriving yourself of an oxygenation process, and by inhaling and holding and exhaling deliberately, you physically tell yourself to relax. And boy, that has been the most go to technique I have whenever I'm scared or I need an immediate reset or I need to just calm down. I'm talking about like right now, like if I get bad news, right?
Yeah,
Or someone makes me mad or I get scared.
right. Yeah, you feel yourself get triggered by that, and you can take the time to do that intention. I work in behavioral health, and they have a machine. Well, I've seen it in the behavioral health space. It's called a biosound chair,
Mm,
and what happens is a practitioner will set somebody down in this chair, and it's audio visual. So it plays music on a screen and all that. But what it does is it measures the heart rate, and it measures a couple other biometrics that you put the thing around the finger and a couple other things on. And what they do is they use it to show the person who's receiving behavioral health treatment that they can intentionally, reset the nervous system, slow things down, because then you see it right there in front of you. You actually do it,
really?
but you see your heart like in real time. You're watching it drop as you're, listening to the music and following. It's kind of like a guided meditation, but
Mm,
you watch your biometrics in front of you reset, and
mm.
it's a powerful thing.
That's that's an that's a great story, man. I would love to hear more about that as we go along in our podcast about some of these behavioral health techniques that you're participating in to help people settle down and to get better from a mental health point of view.
That's right. Yeah, well, it's you're training that individual. You say, okay, well, remember, if you sit down and you do these things and the whole idea is that they'll, like you do it on your own eventually,
Mm.
and so that you're not activated, you don't act on those, um, whatever it is, addiction or regress into whatever it is that they're battling. But yeah, it's a great tool.
Well, they got to be taught. Well, I think the key here is that you have the ability to change your own body's behavior and chemistry
That's right.
through excuse me, through changes in your thinking. I think that's the key here, right? So, you tell me if I got it right. The machine is basically giving you immediate feedback that if you change how you think, you change how you feel.
And I would say too, in your action, because you will slow down your breathing. You'll be intentional about it. So you take some action as well too, intentional action. Like you said, you put that oxygen back into the body, and all of a sudden you're thinking a little bit better, as well
Hmm.
too, because
Hmm.
you've got more oxygen in the brain. So it's interesting how the body, it's got these built-in mechanisms, and they're there for a reason.
Mm.
I'm sure our breath gets short, when we invoke anxiety for a reason. It's just the way the body acts, but we'll forget that we have complete control in changing that.
Another practice that I picked up from an author named Daniel Pink. He wrote a book called When. And this guy is just a beast when it comes to collecting data. he, he is all about the evidence, right? And there's a lot I like about that. I'm a scientist at heart, but I'm also a spiritualist and a believer in the power of our individual thoughts and how they affect our lives. So the mashup of best practices in there. So Daniel Pink put this book together called When, and the fundamental premise of the book is this, is that human beings have perfect times of the day and night to do specific tasks. And if you're trying to do a task that's not meant for that time of day, you're going to have a lot of problems. So, for example, if you happen to be a morning person, what he called the lark, you're going to get your best work done between 6 a.m. and noon. The evidence was overwhelming that you should be doing analytics, hard thinking, problem solving, getting involved with clients, having client meetings, solutioning, all those things I think that people engage from 6 a.m. till noon. But he was really pointed about when to eat. And so, Devin, I think the time of when you should consume food and what you were talking about, setting yourself up and like that, there was no evidence to support that breakfast was meaningful. Either way, eat
Mm,
it or not eat it, doesn't matter. There was no evidence. It was inconclusive
mm.
at all that breakfast even mattered. And you're seeing that a lot with people who have those diets that don't start eating till noon, right? You know,
Yeah, like what do you call that? Some partial fasting of some
that's
sort.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's called intermittent,
intermittent
intermittent,
fasting.
intermittent fasting. The second piece around dinner also no sizable evidence, but huge, overwhelming evidence that you have to eat a lunch.
Mm,
Absolutely. And more importantly, that you should give yourself at least an hour to do it away from wherever you are. Don't eat inside your cubicle. Don't eat where you work. Get up, take your lunch, go get it, go take your packed lunch and go sit someplace else, preferably where there's sunshine of some sort or some light outside. It causes the body to do a reset to give you the momentum to go into the second half of the day, which is much more task oriented. The after lunch is a task oriented thing, like doing emails or responding to things, stuff like that, spreadsheet work, that kind of stuff. And then have another break around 3:30. Now he advocates drinking a small shot of espresso, by the way,
mhm.
at that time. And
I agree with that.
I would agree with that too. Yes.
Yeah.
But and then going into the last part of the day from like 4 o'clock till 6, 7 o'clock is the creative time. It's when you
Mm,
sit down with like blank sheets of paper and you sketch stuff out and it's free floating and stuff like that. So he has these timings that go through and the overwhelming them is, but let's get back to the reset. The the immediate reset you can do is eat lunch, break, and go do that. I mean, that I thought that was really interesting, and I've applied it to my life since.
yeah. Well, what I love overall about that is just how you're using the timing, of when to do things to be
Right.
that much more productive. But the lunch makes complete sense. It
Mhm.
really does. But gosh, how many people, me included, just do it as you go. It's not even like you intentionally stop. You know, I remember just sitting at a computer during lunch and breaking out whatever I had brought with me. It's almost like it just becomes robotic. But I love that about going somewhere, making it really intentional, sitting down. That's your reset for the day because it just seems like the rest you're that much more powerful then for the rest of your day.
You are, and I have to say, and I read this book when it came out, and I've always been rather intentional with getting out around lunchtime. I just knew from my own personal well being that that worked for me, but I didn't know how powerful it could be. And so I've gone as far now over the years of putting in a recurring meeting with myself at lunchtime from noon to 1, and I run it all the way out forever, every day, recurring meeting, Monday through Friday. And I am relentless on protecting that time because I will leave wherever I sit to work. I will like with COVID right now, I will go into my car, drive someplace and park. Or I will go into my garden and sit and burn some sage or whatever. But that has become such guarded time for me as a break in the day that I found that the second half of my day is just equally as productive as the first half now.
Well, I love how disciplined you are about it. Putting the recurring reminder on your phone and all that. But I got to say, I that's something I need to do a little bit better. So, like you said, we always learn something from these podcasts, and
Well, I want to challenge. I should maybe challenge your language on there. It's not a reminder.
mm,
It's a physical appointment
it's an appointment. That's great.
that
Yeah,
I look at. I'm paying myself $1,000 an hour, $10,000 an hour.
right.
Okay, it's a reward. It's a payment. It's a commitment to me. And when you change your thinking, you change your life. And this it's the ultimate self-worth elevator. So I think as we've navigated this topic on this podcast, that if I had to set back and step back and say, what is the most what would be one of the things I could do the most that would give me the highest benefit? And I have to say, in hindsight, now that we've talked about this has probably been one of the most important things I do.
That it's true, and for me as well too, because 8 to 5 or whatever it is that's go time for work for me.
Mhm.
And like you said, meetings and just all the stuff that we're doing, but to really intentionally pause in the middle of that,
Yep.
it is. And I was just thinking that, like, that's that's you indicating to yourself you're worthy enough for that. And yeah, I love what you said about it being the gift, and you're paying yourself $10,000 to do this. It's great. So I can see how that tops the list. I'm gonna have to practice it and then get back
I
and see it.
would love to hear how it goes.
Yeah.
And so I give myself the permission to move the hour around based on need. Sometimes, you just got business you gotta deal with, right? And so I move it around, but I don't give it up,
Hmm.
okay?
Right.
And so that's been when we're running the marathon of business, or we're running the marathon of life, we have to recognize that we can't sprint during the marathon. We just can't.
Mhm.
We
That's
have
right.
we have to run it, right? So what else are you doing? I mean, so let's go over to your side of the street here and
Sure.
and, and
Yeah.
tell us what
Well,
you're doing.
and yeah, another thing that I do, and I started to practice this more, during COVID as much as possible. But because we lost a lot of it seemed like we lost a lot of connections during those times. And so, what I would do is, and I saw a lot of people do this. They would do little virtual dinner meetings or
Mm,
whatnot. But as things loosened up a little bit, I was, and we socially distanced, was able to get together with some friends for dinner. And I tell you, every time I do that and I laugh and I just kind of forget about everything for a little while, and then go back into my life, if you will, after having dinner with friends, I
mhm.
just feel recharged.
That's fantastic. So are you able to have those family meals over the Zoom session?
Well, these are with friends.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. I'm with my family all the time. They reset
No,
me
I meant more
in their
like
own way.
extended family, like your parents. Do you do
Oh,
that? Do you do that with? So that's kind of what
mhm.
I thought, which is you're like having, a virtual Thanksgiving or something like that.
Yeah. No, no, no. We never did that.
Okay.
But I do. I talk to my extended family. Well, my blood family pretty often, and but no, this was more with friends I went to school with.
I see. Yeah.
Colleagues, people I used to work with.
And how's it paying off, or you just felt really good about it afterwards, huh?
Oh yeah, just having. I mean, these are people that we get together and we just laugh,
Mm,
and so I think that's what it is. It's camaraderie. It's feeling connected. It's laughing, and really just having fun and forgetting about everything else. And for me, I always feel just invigorated when I do that through that connection.
mm. So we're gonna break out of the how do you reset your day, but I'm gonna add, a little star that how do I reset, not just their day, but how do I just reset?
Hmm.
And I think the last item here that we wanted to talk about was, planning and following through on your vacations.
Yeah.
If you have the ability to take a vacation, and I know today not everybody does. There's just people who just can't go on vacations. And one of the ways that you potentially could do that is to redefine what you call a vacation. Can you spend a day someplace else doing something on a budget, right? So those type of
Right.
things. So to
Yeah.
take an intentional day to go do something. And How do you look at your time off? I guess that's really the right word. Is how do you look at your time off?
Well, extremely valuable, and meaningful. My our family tries to take one big vacation a year, and so whether that's to, we're in California, so maybe over to Florida or Mexico, and this is all budget pending,
Hmm.
but going out, having fun, and you have those quiet times, whether it's a plane ride or a car drive. And what I like to do on that annual vacation is just think back of the rest of the year, and and everything that's kind of happened in between, and what are my intentions for the upcoming year. So I almost use it as an evaluation tool, for planning as well too. And that just helps me have the insight as to where I'm headed, in life. So it's really meaningful.
When I look at my calendar, one of the techniques that a mentor told me was if you have the chance to lay out the times you plan on taking a vacation at the beginning of the year and block them out, 3, 4, 6 months in advance, a year in advance. And then once you see them, change how you look at your working environment, that you take vacations and you work between them.
Hmm. Right.
As opposed to working and then I take a vacation. Um, just a contextual shift that really was really interesting. I mean, so I set these like islands of vacations on my calendar and I worked between them. And I look to the next vacation on my calendar as my next hop, if you would, and I'm working between them. And that has I did that like 4 years ago. I started that practice, and so far it's been fantastic. And then everybody I work with, I insist that they take their vacations because
Mm,
I
mhm,
just all the staff take your vacations. It's what it's there for. It's what it's
mm.
intended to do. You are specifically take the time. And it's surprising to me how few people actually do that. Will
Yeah,
go.
well, and I tend to think, because I've experienced this, that it's a worthiness issue,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
I'm so needed, or I can't get away, or whatever barrier it is that's blocking them. But I agree. When you have these, lily. If you're a frog, you have these lily pads to kind of jump on
That's
as you're
exactly
moving
right.
along. You're just working in between, and it really does give a powerful time to reset during those vacations.
It really does. So, one of the piece that's come out of this for me, Devin, and I know you have too, so we're back and forth on this, is the power of worthiness to recognize that a reset elevates your self-worth. That
That's right.
that right? So it when you become mindful in your day and a green apple comes through and you're mindful enough to say, that's a green apple, meaning that I don't like that thinking. I don't like how I'm feeling. If your worthiness will match and ask yourself, do I want to flick it off or am I going to tolerate it?
Mhm.
And and I think that's the message here.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And when you take the action to not tolerate it and to flick it off, it just, you're elevating, and you're getting more and more potentially in the red zone, but that's okay. It's a part of the
Part of the
process.
process. It's part of the
Yeah, that's
process.
right. Yeah, but it's great. That's I, I I I don't know if it was you or somebody else that gave me that Apple conveyor belt, but I've really just used it as a metaphor, and it's put some color and meaning into my thinking.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'm not a green apple fan either. So, although they're great in pies,
that's right. That's right.
you
If
know,
used correctly.
if used correctly. But oh, by the way, anyway, so I went on a trip about 3 weekends ago, and I was driving in Northern California in a little town called Lee Vining. It's outside of Yosemite,
Mm,
and there was this coffee shop, and this coffee shop had a green apple tree in the front.
mm.
And all the apples were huge and falling off. I mean, you ever seen an apple tree where the apples just start dropping off?
Oh yeah. right.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. You grew up with all that stuff,
I
didn't
grew
you?
up on an apple orchard. Yeah.
Oh, did you really?
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. We raised cattle and grew apples
Oh my
all
God.
around.
So I'm like talking to the master here. Okay. So I go into the place and they have all these baked goods, but none of them had apples in it. And
Oh, wow.
I was like, "What? Where's the muffins and the pies and the things like that?" Anyways, you reminded me of that. So my wife made a apple thing and it was so good.
Yeah.
I brought a bunch of that stuff back. So hey, how did they get a hold of you, Devin?
Yeah, you can reach me at devon@motiveforlife.com or on LinkedIn at Devon Waits, DEVON WAYT.
Fantastic. And don't forget to go get The Bug in Our Brain. It's the book that has all this technology and language for elevating self worth so that you can cue in on the techniques and the methodologies for what it is that we're trying to do. And that is to raise your identity of worthiness, how you look at yourself from both a conscious and unconscious point of view. And that's through what they call classic conditioning of repetitive statements and phrases and stories and emotions that raise your worthiness as opposed to those green apples that tell us that we are not very good, right? And you can get it for free. If you don't want to buy the book, you can get it for free on the website, motorforlife.com. It's called The Gift. It's a basics of the readings that are there. Also on Insight Timer, which is an app, I've done 5 meditations around elevating worthiness up there. That's for free. Pull them down. Use them. They're ready to do them in the morning, get some disciplines working there. Devin, thank you so very much for joining me this week.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, take care. Bye-bye. This has been a Motive for Life Productions, all rights reserved.